They called her lucky, lucky to marry into power, lucky to sit quietly at a table where decisions were made without her. When her billionaire husband slid the divorce papers across the table, he expected tears, begging, collapse. Instead, she signed without shaking, walked out with a single suitcase and vanished into the rain. He thought it was over. He thought she was nothing. What he didn't know was that her silence wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of a return so calculated, so devastating, it would bring his empire to its knees. They told me I was lucky to even have a chair at that table. Lucky. As if a chair was the same thing as respect. As if 5 years of marriage could be reduced to a seat in a room cold enough to make you forget your own pulse. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Hartwell Dynamics Tower was always set like that. Too cold, too quiet, too sharp. Dylan Hartwell liked it that way. He called it focus. I knew the truth. It was intimidation dressed up as professionalism, and today it was aimed at me. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, wearing a beige sweater I'd worn too many times because it was the kind of neutral that made me disappear. Black slacks. No jewelry except the slim watch my father left me. The one Dylan never bothered to learn the story behind. Across from me, Dylan looked like a magazine cover of himself. Charcoal suit, perfect hair, eyes that refused to land on mine for more than a second. He kept glancing at his watch like the divorce was an errand. Like I was an appointment he couldn't wait to cancel. To his right sat Veronica Hartwell, his mother. Her smile stretched so tight it didn't look like happiness. It looked like hunger. And beside her was Graham Lockridge, their lead attorney. He wore a soft, sympathetic expression that didn't reach his eyes. He had the kind of voice that could turn a person's life into paperwork and still sleep at night. Graham slid a thick folder across the mahogany table until it stopped in front of me with a neat, final tap. "Let's review the terms one last time, Mrs. Hartwell," he said gently, like he was talking to a child. "You file under irreconcilable differences. You waive any claim to the Hartwell family trust. No spousal support. You vacate the Tribeca penthouse immediately in the Palm Beach estate within 24 hours. In exchange, Mr. Hartwell agrees to a one-time settlement of $50,000. $50,000. My brain did the math without asking permission. 5 years. Hundreds of nights where Dylan came home furious at the board, scared his legacy would slip through his fingers. The countless mornings I rewrote his presentations because he didn't understand why certain phrasing could insult the wrong people in the wrong markets. The weekends I hosted donors and smiled through Veronica's subtle insults because Dylan needed his mother's social network. $50,000 was less than Dylan spent on a watch he wore twice. Veronica leaned forward, her diamonds making soft little clicks like a warning. "It's generous, Maya," she said. Her voice carried that particular kind of cruelty rich people don't think counts. "Considering you brought absolutely nothing into this family, no pedigree, no connections, no meaningful career, we're paying you to leave quietly. Don't get greedy." Dylan finally lifted his eyes. They looked tired in the way people look tired when they've been selfish for too long. "Just sign it," he said, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. "Sienna's waiting. We have engagement photos at 4. Sienna Ashford. Even hearing her name felt like swallowing ice. The perfect match his mother had always wanted for him. Bright, wealthy, from a family whose last name opened doors before you even touched the handle. I knew about Sienna long before he admitted it. He'd been careless on purpose. Receipts from expensive hotels left in his jacket. A jewelry box tossed too casually on his dresser. Little reminders that he was already living a future without me. I looked down at the papers again. The words blurred slightly, but not because I was crying. I wasn't. My eyes were dry, my throat tight, and my chest felt strangely hollow, like the part of me that used to hope had finally accepted the truth. I was never his partner to them. I was a temporary solution, a placeholder. "Maya," Dylan said softer now, "you have nowhere to go. Take the money." I could have fought. I could have thrown the folder back at them and demanded what I was owed. I could have reminded Dylan that the reason he still had a company was because there were nights I stayed up until dawn, building strategies he later presented as his own. But I'd learned something about people like the Hartwells. They didn't respond to emotion. They responded to control. And I was done giving them either. "I have one condition," I said. Graham's pen paused. Veronica's smile twitched as if she'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for me to beg. "Here it comes," her eyes said. "The house, the millions, the groveling." But I didn't reach for a number. I reached into my tote bag, plain leather, no designer logo, and pulled out a pen. a smooth black Mont Blanc my father gave me the day I left home. The only luxury I ever owned that wasn't borrowed from someone else's world. I don't want the 50,000, I said. The room went silent in a way that felt physical. Even the air conditioning hum seemed louder. Dylan frowned. What? I don't want your money. I kept my voice steady, because the second you let your voice shake in rooms like this, they smell blood. I want a clean break. Remove my name from any Hartwell Dynamics documentation, including any silent partner clauses connected to your charitable trust. And I want the non-disclosure agreement regarding my background to be mutual. If I can't talk about you, you can't talk about me. Graham narrowed his eyes, searching for a trap. Veronica scoffed like I was being dramatic. Dylan looked briefly irritated, as if I'd turned 10 minutes into 15. A mutual NDA is standard, Graham said carefully, but refusing the settlement is unusual. It's my decision, I said, and for the first time all morning, I looked directly at Dylan. I don't need your money, I just want out. Veronica laughed, short and sharp. She's playing martyr. Fine, it saves us 50 grand. Write it up. Graham made the amendments. The paper slid back in front of me. I didn't hesitate. I signed my name with the steady hand of someone who had already grieved the marriage months ago. When I stood, Veronica's voice snapped at me like a leash. You have 24 hours to vacate the penthouse. My bag is already in the lobby, I replied. I walked to the heavy doors, my heart strangely calm, and paused with my hand on the handle. Dylan was already checking his phone, probably texting Sienna. I could have walked out without a word, but some part of me still cared about people who didn't deserve it. Be careful with the Osaka deal next week, I said quietly, looking back. The Kansai Consortium values honor over profit. Don't use the aggressive strategy Graham drafted. They'll walk away. Dylan rolled his eyes. I think I know how to run my company, he said. I nodded once, accepting the final proof of what I already knew, and stepped into the hallway. Outside, New York was a gray blur of rain and noise. I walked 2 blocks, turned a corner, and stopped beside a black SUV that had been idling like it was waiting for me. The rear door opened before I even reached for the handle. A tall man stepped out, holding an umbrella over my head with practiced precision. His suit looked like it belonged to another world, one where weather and consequences didn't apply. Ms. Quinn, he said in a low voice touched with an old European accent. Is it done? I slid into the warm leather interior, and only then did my breath finally shake. It's done, Lucian, I whispered. As the car pulled away from the tower, my phone vibrated with a single message from a secure number I hadn't used in years. Ready when you are. North Star is in position. I stared out at the rain-streaked city, thinking about Dylan's face when he checked his watch while ending our marriage. And I felt something inside me shift from sorrow into something colder, steadier. Because he believed I was walking away with nothing, and that belief was about to cost him everything. If you were in my place, would you have signed those papers without a fight? Yes or no? The car merged into traffic, rain tapping softly against the windows like a clock counting down. I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and for the first time since I'd walked into that freezing conference room, I let myself breathe. Does he suspect anything? Lucian asked from the driver's seat, his eyes steady in the mirror. He thinks I'm going to a shelter, I said. The words tasted strange, almost bitterly funny. He thinks I left with a suitcase and $50 to my name. Lucian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He didn't need to. Silence had always been our language. My phone vibrated again. This time I answered. Maya. The voice on the other end was calm, controlled, unmistakable. Rowan Blackwood never wasted words. Are you safe? I'm fine, I said. I signed everything. No alimony, no settlement, mutual NDA. There was a brief pause, then a low chuckle. Good. That means when the truth surfaces, he can't stop it. I stared out the window as the city slid past, my reflection ghosting across the glass. I needed to know, I said quietly. I needed to see if Dylan had any kindness left in him, any hesitation. And he checked his watch. That silence on the line felt heavier than anger. Then we proceed, Rowan said. North Star Holdings is ready. When the call ended, Lucian turned onto a quieter street. The SUV stopped beside a private terminal that most people didn't know existed, let alone had access to. A jet waited on the tarmac, matte black, sleek, unmarked. Not flashy, powerful. As I stepped out, the rain stopped as suddenly as it had begun, like the city itself was holding its breath. Rowan descended the steps without hurry. He looked the same as he always had and completely different. Older, sharper, calmer. The kind of man who didn't need to announce his power because rooms adjusted themselves when he entered. He pulled me into a brief embrace, solid, grounding. "You did what you had to do," he said into my hair. "I know it hurt." "I didn't cry," I said, surprised by how much that mattered to me. "Not once." Rowan leaned back, studying my face. Strength doesn't always look loud. Inside the jet, everything smelled like clean leather and quiet certainty. As it lifted into the sky, Manhattan fell away beneath us, a glittering grid of ambition and indifference. "Dylan's Osaka expansion," I said once we were airborne. "He financed it with a high-risk mezzanine loan." Rowan's eyebrow lifted slightly. "You're sure?" "I structured the initial projections," I replied. "He didn't understand the downside. If the Kansai consortium walks, he defaults." "And they will," Rowan said, not as a threat, but a fact. "Without you." I folded my hands together, feeling the familiar ache of responsibility twist in my chest. If that deal collapses, 3,000 workers in Michigan lose their jobs. Their pensions are tied to that expansion. Rowan watched me carefully. "Even now you're thinking about them." "They didn't do anything wrong," I said. "Dylan did." The jet hummed steadily, carrying us forward. Then Rowan smiled, slow and knowing. "So what do you want to do?" I took a breath. This was the moment where everything changed, where I stopped reacting and started choosing. "I want to buy the debt," I said. "The entire loan." Rowan didn't blink. "That's nearly $300 million. My trust unlocks the moment the divorce is finalized," I said softly. It happened 10 minutes before we boarded. He leaned back, studying me with something that looked like pride. "You want to hold his leash." "I want to protect the people he's about to hurt," I corrected, "and I want him to know exactly why his world is about to collapse." Rowan laughed, a genuine sound. "Then we do it my way. North Star will acquire the debt through a shell. Clean, legal, invisible." By the time we landed, the wheels were already turning. Back in New York, Dylan sat at his desk, unaware that the ground beneath him was shifting. He frowned at his laptop, refreshing a file that wouldn't open. "Access denied," he muttered. He called IT, then legal, then finance. The answers grew more frantic by the minute. "Sir, those files were never hosted on our servers." "What do you mean never?" "They were mirrored from an external cloud account. Access was revoked." "By who?" There was a pause. "By EV Consulting." Dylan froze. My old initials. A company he never bothered to ask about because it didn't have his name on it. By the time Veronica breezed into his office, champagne already in hand, Dylan was sweating. "Sienna is on her way," she said brightly. "She wants to discuss floral arrangements. Orchids. Thousands of them." "Not now," Dylan snapped. "Something's wrong." Veronica waved him off. "She's just being petty. She'll fade away." But then his phone buzzed. A text from the CFO. "Change of ownership detected in mezzanine loan. New creditor, North Star Holdings." Dylan stared at the screen, a chill running through him that had nothing to do with air conditioning. Across the ocean, standing on a terrace overlooking the water, I watched the sun rise, wrapped in a robe that felt like freedom. Stylists moved quietly behind me, racks of dresses lining the room like possibilities. Rowan stepped beside me holding a tablet. "The acquisition is complete," he said. "You're officially the creditor." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it settle. "Then he's already in trouble," I murmured. "He doesn't know it yet," Rowan replied. "But he will, at the gala." I opened my eyes, the reflection staring back at me no longer small or uncertain. "Good," I said. "I want him to see me." As the sea shimmered below and plans locked into place, a single thought echoed in my mind. If you were holding the power to end someone who once broke you, would you wait for the right moment or strike immediately? Yes or no? The night of the gala arrived wrapped in salt air and soft music, the kind of elegance designed to intimidate. The Hartwell estate glowed against the dark, every light perfectly placed, every detail curated to announce power. Guests drifted across the lawn in tailored suits and silk gowns, laughing too loudly, sipping champagne that cost more than most people's rent. Dylan stood near the stage, glass in hand, forcing smiles. He should have felt victorious. He was free, engaged, admired. Yet a knot sat in his chest, tight and unyielding. Ever since the afternoon I signed those papers, nothing had gone the way it should. Files missing, calls unanswered. That strange message from finance he kept rereading, hoping it would change. "Relax," Sienna said brightly, looping her arm through his. "Tonight is about us." Before he could respond, a low rumble rolled across the estate. At first it sounded like distant thunder, Then it grew louder, sharper, until conversation stalled and heads tilted toward the sky. A sleek black jet swept overhead, flying lower than it should have, its engines cutting through the string quartet's melody. Glasses rattled, napkins fluttered. The jet banked once and descended toward the private strip beyond the lawn. Dylan's heart dropped. "That's a heavy jet," someone murmured nearby. "Who lands something like that here?" The music never recovered. The party's rhythm broke as a convoy of black SUVs approached the entrance. When the lead vehicle stopped, silence fell, thick and expectant. Lucian stepped out first, calm and immovable. He opened the rear door. I emerged into the light. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The dress caught the floodlights like midnight water, deep blue and impossibly alive. My hair was shorter now, sharper. I felt taller, steadier, as if the ground finally recognized me. Dylan's glass slipped from his hand and shattered at his feet. "Maya," he breathed. Veronica surged forward, her face burning with disbelief. "This is a private event. Remove her." No one moved. Rowan stepped beside me, his hand warm at my back. The governor broke from the crowd, surprise flickering into something like awe. "Rowan Blackwood," he said. "I've been trying to meet you for years." Rowan smiled politely. "Good evening. I believe you know my partner." "Partner." The word settled over the crowd like a verdict. I walked forward until I stood a few feet from Dylan. He looked smaller than I remembered, his confidence leaking away in real time. "You can't be here," he whispered. "I paid you to leave." "You paid someone else," I replied calmly. "She's gone." His phone vibrated. Once. Twice. He glanced down and the color drained from his face. "North Star Holdings has invoked a covenant breach. Full repayment due within 24 hours. He looked up at me, panic finally breaking through. "You did this?" I nodded. "I did." The music stopped completely. "You leveraged the company to impress people who don't care about you," I said, my voice carrying across the lawn. "You ignored the warnings. You gambled with pensions and livelihoods. I didn't buy the debt to destroy Hartwell Dynamics. I bought it to save it." Veronica lunged forward, fury overtaking decorum. "You ungrateful—" Lucian moved faster than thought, stopping her without force, without spectacle. She stumbled back, humiliated and stunned. I turned back to Dylan. "As of tomorrow morning, I convert the debt into equity. 51%. The truth landed like a physical blow. "You're taking my company," he whispered. "I'm taking responsibility," I corrected gently. "Something you were never willing to do." Sienna stepped away from him then, eyes flicking between us, calculating. She removed the ring and pressed it into his chest. "I can't do this," she said, already retreating towards safety. Dylan stood alone as the crowd shifted, whispers rippling outward. I didn't stay to watch him fall. The following weeks were quiet in the way healing often is. The board approved the transition, engineers were rehired. The Kansai Consortium returned to the table. Stocks stabilized. People slept better knowing their jobs were safe. On my first morning as CEO, I stood by the window of my office and watched the city wake up. It looked different now. Less like a cage, more like a landscape I finally understood. Rowan joined me, handing me a cup of coffee. "Any regrets?" I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who made herself small to survive. "No," I said, "just clarity." That afternoon, I signed bonuses for the Michigan plant. That evening, I walked out of the building hand in hand with someone who had never asked me to disappear. I had learned that silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. That walking away doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it's how you return changed, and that your worth was never decided in rooms where you were tolerated instead of valued. As you sit with this ending, I'm curious what you feel. Did Maya do the right thing, or would you have chosen a different path? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if you want more stories like this, remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need the reminder that quiet strength can change everything.